But yeah, I normally like started on like some random. Um, but yeah, if you get Nick to kill the music for me, please, and get the ball rolling. We're here. It's phase one, trial five. Here and doing things, and we are back at In Our Nature, making it happen. Make some noise, guys. Make some noise. There it is. It's live, folks. It's live, or at least in front of people. You might be listening to it late, but we have some people pull up, and we always appreciate that. I got my main man with me here today, Anderson Brasileiro. He is a painter. He is a graffiti artist. Ex-graffiti artist?
Keep it that way for, legal reasons.
I feel it. I feel it. Yeah, lean into the mic for me. There you go. You gotta get comfortable. You gotta get comfortable with it. There you go.
Let's go.
It's your best friend for the next hour.
So, Mike.
There you go.
I'm gonna name it throughout, or like in the middle of it, and call it Bob or something. No, I'm gonna get more creative than Bob, man. It's too generic.
I feel it. What's good with you, man? How you been?
Good, man. Just drank 3 margaritas next door, so I'm loose. Feeling happy. I'm smiling.
It's something about the painters that. Never mind. I'm gonna put Kyle out like that. Never mind. It's something about the painters, man. It's always a little bit of alcohol before.
Pre-game in, I'm a reclusive type, so like coming out of my shell is like it takes a little bit. I'm more in my shell. I'm comfortable in my shell. When I walk out, though, it's like, all right, I need some.
Right.
And usually it ends up being a little alcohol, but I've been on the moderate term today, so I'm not going to be sloshy and crazy. I'm chilling. Still focused.
Focused is good, man.
Yeah.
Focused is good. I don't know necessarily where to start. Like you kind of broke down a little bit, like off the record. You're kind of having a conversation and letting people know like where you're from. So I know your backstory a little bit, but for the folks who are just coming in contact with you, give them a quick little lineage.
All right. Well, yeah, no, I'm Brazilian American. My parents moved out here like in the 70s and 80s. My mom first, my dad second. I was born in New York City, hence the hat on my head. Big Yankee fan. Yeah, so born in New York City, moved around a lot after that. I stayed out there up until I was like 4.5. Moved down to Texas, moved back up north to Connecticut, moved down to North Carolina. Been in North Carolina for like 20 years, or like closing in on 20. So, or like, it's like 18 years, yeah, to be exact. So yeah, just up and down. But yeah, it's mainly I just been painting, doing different creative stuff, on the other side of it to get more detailed. Just been focusing on painting canvas, being more traditional with it, rather than, hitting the streets and just tagging up stuff like a little hoodlum. But that was the exciting moment in my life. I'm just trying to make it more mature now and whatnot. Trying to focus in on that and making a career out of it,
No doubt. So for those ex graffiti days.
Yeah. Say what?
How did those ex graffiti days get started? Or those graffiti days? How'd that roll? How'd that happen?
It was exciting, man. Like really, it was before graffiti. It was like skateboarding. It was just like reckless attitude and just like, when I started learning curse words and whatnot, really breaking out of like what my mom was trying to structure me to be as the the Saint Pure kid that everybody thought I was. Like my mom raised me in a church. She's very religious till this day. She kind of shuns everything I do, always worried about dudes or like the dude. She just like kind of pushed me to be something different because I felt like my life was predetermined, So really, when I was at the age of like being able to go outside without her like surveillance, I just like started going crazy. Like just started learning everything, like listening to different types of music. Like my mom put me onto the Beatles and like the Bee Gees and stuff like that. And that wasn't really my cup of tea. Although they are great bands, they are great groups, but to me, like I was trying to live in the now and also know what the social norm was outside. And I lived in like predominantly like, lower income areas throughout my life. So I was listening to a lot of like, not to like, box it all in, but hip hop and like, kind of crazy punk rock stuff when I was a little kid. So just being a reckless dude was almost by nature. and also living in apartment complexes. So you had like all these little kids that were just like coming up with different crazy stuff to do, you know, like throwing firecrackers at cats, or you know what I'm saying, like just like stealing stuff from the local Kmart, and like just being reckless. But that was exciting.
He loves cats, by the way.
No
he
cats
lives with
were
cats.
harmed.
Yeah,
except for one that I still have flashbacks to, but it was not that bad. It was like we just hit him in the butt with the BB gun, but he started, yeah. But it was a fun time. But like, so with that excitement, with
it's gonna get canceled by the cat community.
I felt super bad for that cat. I never got to see him again. I hope it wasn't anything like lethal. But I mean, it was a pellet gun. Yeah, you can survive that, cat. Come on. But anyway, but yeah, I got into the graffiti due to, like, you know, just the excitement I had outside, like, you know, just meeting up with my homies and just figuring out stuff to do. We were doing like sports and stuff like that, but then, you know, once I started like bringing out my skateboard and like my BMX bike, riding on pegs, doing wheelies, like seeing how long we could go on wheelies and stuff like that, we just started getting into the other things of it, like trying to rap and like trying to get into more of like the arts. But we didn't even care about that word at that time, you know. We were just trying to like be cool, you know, and like just see where we can go with like expression. But I remember one time, like, you know, it's just, graffiti's always been a part of my life. Visually, it's just an influence, because when I lived in New York City, that was just apparent. It was something you just see constantly. But when I moved down to North Carolina, I was like 10 years old, 11 years old, and like listening to NWA for the first time, and like, you know, just being like, you know, fuck the system type attitude. That's when I like would go to like Kmart. Kmart had cameras that didn't work. We all knew that, because, you know, we would send a kid in there and like, go steal that baseball, man. We lost one in the woods. Like, go get one. We need it. And he would just go up in there, and like, we're talking about the sports section was in the way back to where like the sporting arms and stuff is. And he would take like 2 baseballs and like just walk out with them in his hands, and just like nothing would happen. So we just realized then and there, like, okay, that's straight. We can take whatever we want from there. And then eventually it turned out, I was like, all right, I'm gonna, you know, grab my balls and go up in there and grab something. And I really wanted spray paint, so I can just like, you know, mess around, hit up some walls and like spray paint my skateboard and like just do stuff with it. And then so I stole a couple cans, some black ones I remember. And since then, like, I just went around and just started like writing stuff all over the place. It was like random shit. It was like, you know, I suck, or like, you're just being stupid, like just making like senseless gibber, you know, like it was like really dumb, but at the same time it was just more for the thrill. So us kids were just like all up on that, like we loved doing that. So eventually there came a time to where there was this guy who came into town from New Jersey, and he kind of took me under his wing, because he noticed like I was really like, well, he noticed that I had spray paint on my fingertips. He's like, what are you doing? You spray? He's like, what is that? What's on your hands? And I was like, yeah, it's spray paint. And he's just like, oh, so like, what do you throw up? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't know any lingo. I didn't know anything. And we're like, I was 13 or something. And he's like, so what's your tag? And he's like, what the hell are you talking about, bro? Like, and he was like, no, you got to write your name. You got to be writing something. Like, you got to go across town. You got to do this and that. He's like very New York, New Jersey mentality. And like much older. He was like 20. I was 13. So he put me down for a name, which I still carry to this day, Ghost. So he kind of like dawned me, you know what I'm saying? So he gave me like that flame, that little fuel for the flame. And he was like, yo, so just go around town and put that up there. And I was like, Ghost, that's so dope. And he's like, I was like, why? Why Ghost? And he's like, so you can just be in and out of spots, and just remember that. Don't get caught, because this shit is illegal. And I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, all right.
Sound advice.
It's like
sound advice from the older generation.
What pain is, you would do whatever, right? But when you realize that shit hurts, like, damn, I might lay back from that. Like, so when he told me that shit is illegal, that word, like, illegal, like, that shit just like vibrated in my head. I'm like, oh shit, like, I can get in serious trouble. But I was 13 at the time. I'm like, I would go like juvie or something. Like, juvie ain't that bad. Like, I ain't worried about it. But and this is around the time I was going to like the school called Githens. middle school, and there were some badass kids in there, you know what I'm saying? And they would do the craziest shit. And I'm just like, bro, like, if those guys can just do shit and like end up in suspended for like a couple days or some shit, then like, what's the worst that can happen to me if I get caught spray painting, you know? Like, I just thought there was like no harm in it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I want to before you like keep going, I want to go back a little bit. You kind of touched on some inspiration, and I know this just from like previous conversation, but I kind of think it'll be good context for the audience. Like, you talked about when we were kicking it one time, you talked about kind of riding the trains from like Connecticut into New York.
Yeah.
And that was like a lot of the times where you saw a lot of the like dopest graffiti, or kind of like opened your mind to it.
Yeah.
So kind of like, can you elaborate on that? Or yeah, talk a little bit about that.
All right. Well, yeah, like, so I lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, and like, if you know where that is, that shit is it's rich. It's considered to be per capita one of the richest places you can live in the United States. But I lived in the projects. So it's like this little hole in their donut, you know, that's like doesn't belong, you know. And me and my mom, every weekend we would go from Greenwich, Connecticut to Grand Central Station in New York City. And you start to see the differences in like the towns we would hit up or like go through. And you know, the closer and closer you get to New York City, the more urbanized it gets, the more like graffiti you start seeing. And I was just always like a window kid. Like, you know, I moved around so much in my life that I just got used to having the window seat and just like look outside. And like, that was something I always did. I was always observant. And going up to New York City, you start to see like the flashes of graffiti, and like, it's crazy. It felt like a dream, you know, like in a dreamlike state where things just move very fast. And all this just started to like register and kind of like mesmerize me as far as the colors, the tags, and different things. And like, by every week I would try to remember like certain tags and stuff, so like names started to stick out, and like I would see like multiple you know, tags and like how people were getting around, but I didn't know any of it yet because I wasn't introduced to it. But it was just more of like this allure, you know, that I was like sucked into, and I really started getting like good vibes from it. And like, I was like, yo, I really want to get into that kind of
So
stuff.
at what point did you think you made the connection between like, or did you make a connection between like that experience and like the impulse or the desire to like grab the cans? Is that like
it definitely came full circle, but it was just more like, you know, the moment I was excited, and it's like just doing reckless stuff. But then that's when I realized like, yeah, I want to start doing burners, like doing bubble letters and stuff like that, and like getting more like technical with it and seeing what I can do.
What was the progression, or how long was that period between stealing those first cans to meeting the guy who gave you your name to
getting better
to like when you started to be like, okay, I can actually get into like the culture of what it is, and like all of that?
It happened very fast because it ended bad. But it was probably about like a year and a half to 2 years. So like me stealing that spray can, I was about 13, and then like meeting him was probably like, you know, halfway through that 2 year span, and then, you know, actually trying to like do those bubble letters and the fades and the different like color orientation and all that happened towards the very end of it. Well, it wasn't the end, but it was just right where it marked like, you know, a significant like heat. Like I stopped doing it because I got caught, you know, and it was tough because like I felt like I let homie down by having tagged Ghost, and he told me not to get caught, and I got caught. So it was like really rough, and I had to do like a little community service. I had to take it down myself, and we're talking about like something that spanned like 15 feet wide, and like I was on my tippy toes doing stuff, you know, like doing that one. And I was in my sandals, bro. I don't know, it was stupid as hell because like I heard some rustling around the bushes that, you know, that was hit right around the corner, and it was a maintenance dude that lived in the neighborhood. I tagged in my neighborhood, in my apartment complex. How stupid am I? But I did that because like I was just like, I got inspired off some shit that I watched, like, you know, I downloaded off LimeWire or something, and it was like a graffiti documentary. And then I walked outside in my sandals. I'm like, I'm gonna go fucking throw up this crazy thing. And I went out there, I tagged my name, and I started doing my name, and I was filling it in. And as I was filling it in, I hear somebody like behind me, and then that that was like the maintenance dude, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, that shit sent like a jolt. And I was like, whoa, like, and I was in my sandals, so I start to jet, and I lose a sandal, and I'm running barefoot, or like with one sandal, and I'm stepping on twigs and shit. I'm like dying, like, but that adrenaline was pumping, and like I didn't know where to go, so I went home, and like the maintenance. Granted, we were living in this apartment complex for already like 6 years. This maintenance dude knows
who you are,
and like knows exactly who my mom is, knows where we live. I'm like, I go home and I'm like, bro, I am done. Like I am caught. My mom isn't home from work, and it's just like that scared vibe because my mom's gonna come home and there's gonna be a phone call, probably already on her phone, and like that's that like scared, like nervous feeling. So I immediately was just like, all right, I gotta fucking turn myself in. So I go down to the office, and I tell him like, yo, I don't know if you got word of what just happened, but I spray painted the side of a building out here, and I'm just trying to turn myself in. She's like, what? And then immediately right then, the dude that was chasing after me walks in and just looks at me. He's like, hey, and I'm like, no, I just turned myself in, dude, like chill. And he's just like, all right, so like, what were you thinking, man? Like, he was some Hispanic dude, and like I couldn't understand anything at that point. There was so much going in my head. So that was like the traumatic effect, and that's why I ended, like, because I eventually, like, my mom was pissed, bro. When we're talking about pissed, Hispanic moms know how to whoop ass a different kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So
is that when you decided to transition into like more of the fine art context, or
not
was it?
Then that's when I really just chilled out on the art.
Got you.
I was just doodling and like keeping everything like still graffiti, but like on paper and stuff. Just exploring where that can go. Yeah. And I mean, I got into fashion around that time too.
Random question, and just because you were talking about like the twigs and all of that. Do you still paint in the woods?
Yeah, not so much this now because it's hot.
Oh yeah,
but and mosquitoes, man. Like,
yeah.
The neighborhood that I live in has a creek, and it's like it just breeds these massive mosquitoes, and like I cannot be out there longer than 10 minutes and have like this massive welt on me. So I'm like, I chilled out. I paint during the winter or like the fall. The fall is the best time. That's when I'm really out there. And like the trees are changing colors. It's like this cool vibe. Like
what inspired that? For context, I don't know if anybody's like looked at his Instagram, but it was more so with the last series you were doing, not necessarily with this like newer stuff, but that last series that he was doing like towards the middle and like end of last year, a lot of the photos that he would take or like just pictures in general were outdoors, just kind of like in the woods painting.
Well, I mean, you get like, I love how we're in a place called In Our Nature. You know, it's like, because I'm very like, you know, in tune with that kind of stuff. Like a very like, as Brazilians, we walk around with sandals and like shorts. We're like always on the beach and stuff like that. Like there's a natural vibe. But in regards to what you were saying, going outside it reminds me of like, you know, where I'm from, like that intuitive nature, and also like just the graffiti days. Like I would be outside and doing stuff, and like that gave me, you know, the sense of like being youthful again. Like I hate being cooped up inside the crib, because as a kid I would be dying to go outside. You know what I'm saying?
Crazy idea. What would it look like? Well, I guess people kind of already do this. Maybe not necessarily in the context of the woods, but you ever thought about doing an exhibition
in the woods?
In the woods.
It's like you like people would feel about that.
You like drop a pin.
Crazy motherfucker.
It might stick out. No, I don't know. Random idea. But.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. I've never thought of it, but like, I mean, it's cool because like I've been peeping some stuff like Spray Planet or like, you know, different IGs would be posting this cool like take how people would do like murals in the woods by wrapping like saran wrap around trees, creating like this see-through like I guess platform for people to paint on, and it's cool because like they would do like a massive squirrel or something like that, and like people from far away just taking a hike would just be like, yo, what the fuck? That's a massive ass squirrel. And, like, it's just cool. I peeped it. So like in a way I can see where that could go. But I didn't think about it. See, that's why I like talking to you, man. You just be throwing ideas.
Got to, bro.
Brilliant mind.
Hey man, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. But okay, so At what point did you you got into fashion for a little bit, and then at what point did you like pick up the paintbrush or try to decide to get back into the paint thing? Like, what was or I guess if you want to highlight that period, what was that like from the clothing to back to painting?
So I was like, okay, Durham was like reckless hood, like, and just the school embodied that, you know, and fashion, like talking about Air Force Ones, Jabot jeans, and like XL tees, and you know, just going crazy with fashion. That was when I started like coordinating colors and different things, and like understanding like, you know, that culture, you know, hip hop culture. And so when I got into like the traditional art, it was like during school, because teachers would be like, you know, like you like what you have on, like compose your colors onto the canvas or onto the paper that way, like, you know, start doing that. So in high school, really is when I picked up the paintbrush and I started really trying to do it, even though I was still a little idiot and like not understanding the full potential of where art could take me. So I had this teacher, Miss Sywick, you remember? She there was a love-hate with that lady, because she would always like be cracking the whip on us, trying to get us to do the like project of the day. But you know, she would also be more nurturing too. Like she would actually care about what you're doing, like looking at it and being like, no, I'd like this and that and that. So I learned a lot through her, not knowing, you know what I'm saying? But I really developed like what I needed to in order to understand a fundamental of where I'm at, where I started like 6-7 years ago, like trying to do it myself. And it's funny because like on report cards, she would write underneath my grade, she would write, does not work to full potential. And my mom would be like smacking me on the back of the head, like, what are you doing, pissing off the teacher and all that. And like, I didn't know, I didn't care, you know, but now it's like, damn, I could have really taken full advantage of that, you know, of that time period with a lady that actually cared about, you know, her students' experiences in her classroom. And I was just walking in late, probably getting kicked out of class just because it was being like more, you know, rebellious in there and like not caring about the project, and always getting like a B plus instead of like an A plus because I didn't learn to shade or, you know, or like, you know, really take the time and finishing the project too early or something like that. But the coolest validation I have, which I don't like to say that because I don't really look at validation as a form of like what keeps me going. But this one really kind of stood out to me is like she added me as a friend on Instagram and Facebook. And she's been liking my pictures and like commenting and saying like, go Anderson. I'm like, damn, bro, my fucking art teacher from high school is giving me props. Like, and like all those years, huh? Right, exactly. Like she's like, damn, like you really stepped up your game, and I'm like sitting here like, damn, bro, like, yeah, I really did step up my game. Like my potential is like blossoming right now in her eyes, like, and she's like giving me pointers, like, yeah, you should come out to New York and like you should look into this artist and that artist. I'm like, damn, man, this is so cool. I mean, like I'm more mature into like, you know,
be able to accept it and like, yeah, for sure, appreciate
like,
it,
like, all right, like I hear you, like pushing her off type thing. Or like not giving a fuck. But now it's like, damn, I'm really appreciating of it because, dude, there was a time where I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do, and art was right there, and she was telling me like, bro, you're good enough, you can do this. And now she's like congratulating me on like, I haven't done everything I want to do with art yet, but she understands like that's the potential I was telling you about.
Right.
And
for some of our, and I think like creatively, a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit for like the things that we have done because we are thinking about that next thing. But like, what would you say are like some of your milestones up until this point? Because you said you've been at it for like 7-8 years. So like, what are some of the things that you're happy to have checked off your list at this point? If you could like pat yourself on the back.
There's like a handful. First, I was featured in a magazine called Four. That's out of Charlotte. Sierra Bird and Nicole Comack, if I can remember. Something like that. But dude, I just posted a picture on my Instagram one day and she just commented, it's like, you want to be on this magazine? I'm like, yeah, like that's cool as hell. And little did I know that magazine is like the dopest shit in my
It's
house.
fire.
Like, it's
I have
the
like
perfect-
4 out of the 5 issues.
Yeah,
I got everything except for the first issue.
You know how like the material is.
It was
and, like,
amazing.
It's a great magazine, and
amazing.
I didn't know. I thought it was just gonna be like a creative. No offense to Creative Living, but just like something that's like issue in, issue out, like, and almost like kind of a blur of what you can read, but everything is super like, you know, composed like an ultimate coffee table book. Like, you pick that joint up and just flip through it and just get a cool visual out of it, and then you start to read it, and then it's like, damn, like these are some very, very talented people that are in this.
Yeah.
So I was humbled by that.
And it's crazy how like with in general how like the quality of publication or the quality of something that's being put out can make people like rock with your stuff that much more. Like when the people are actually that are putting it together put care into it,
right?
You can see like how the
Total
end
difference.
user like reacts to it differently versus if it's just like, you know, you get something that just ends up, let's say, on something digital, or somebody writes about you on their blog.
Right,
like it's
right.
different from it like being like printed with
Paper,
like this matte, like nice finish, like good photos, good photography.
Yeah, because I feel like we're living in that technological advance, like to where everything is being read online, and like we're losing in touch with the literature and the, you know, paper. But dude, I feel like sometimes I'll go to Barnes and Noble and just flip through books and smell them, and like I'll get that vibe. It's like, damn, like this reminds me of like the Scholastic Book Fair when I was like 8 years old. You know what I'm saying? And that shit, just to me, I would want all these books and I wouldn't even read half of them. You know, I'm just like, give me that. Right. But yeah, no, books is like, it has a certain vibe to it, and like you just see, and like collecting books, having libraries, and like that's my goal. I'm trying to have a room full of books. You know what I'm saying? Even though like sometimes like I get so like riled up by a book that I'll give it to somebody for free and be like, bro, read this. Like, trust me, you gonna learn something. And but like I try to hold most of the books like at the crib, and like it's cool because I just built a bookcase. So like just putting all the books in there and being like, I remember that one. It's like materially you can see it, and like you can like have flashback, as opposed to like on your phone. Like your phone is your phone. It's like you don't look at your phone and see books. You look at your phone, you see endless possibility, but you don't see that one book in front of you. You see like the collection of books all on like a screen, and on a bookshelf you can take out a book and like admire its shape, admire its like figure, and like the way the paper feels and stuff like that. I feel like that it's like in itself like a life form. Like it's it gives you like some sort of vibe, you know. It's a good vibe, like a natural vibe.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm all about that natural shit, you know.
Yeah.
Like I be walking to work and like touching plants, like it's like you haven't, like, imagine I'd be like, sometimes I'm weird like this. Sometimes I'm like, I would touch something because I know that thing hasn't been touched that day or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's all a living life form. It's weird.
That's not weird. It's interesting
Tapping into a
perspective. I
weird
actually
mind.
never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like,
let me
okay,
show this some love.
This probably never been touched like in the past week or so, right? Probably, but you know, I touched it and I'm getting some sort of vibe and like, you know, in tune with nature. And
Not to burst your bubble, but I touched it when I was moving the couch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so we're in tune, bro.
I'm with it. See,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? We
No,
already
but that's
locked
the
in.
thing. Like, you know, I feel like me myself, it's like, you know, you got to be out and about and touching stuff. Like, you know, it's there. Like, you know, grab hold of what's around you. Like, don't just let it pass by. There's like, you know, that Ferris Bueller joint, like you blink your eyes, your life is gone type thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like that, because like, you know, you never know when that tree is gonna get cut down and like you're gonna build something there.
Oh, yeah, especially like with as fast as like it's happening across the country, across the world really, but as fast as things are developing and like new things are being built, that's very, very true. You could go to a spot one day and it's like a park or something, and then like you come back and it's like,
right.
You know,
and
what
you're
I'm saying?
like,
Something
damn,
completely
like,
different.
you know, you remember that tree that you used to sit under and like sip like lemonade and just chill for an hour or two and like collect yourself. And there's memories involved and stuff like that.
For sure.
So yeah, I feel like, you know, there's an intimate relation that I have with nature, and that's a part of the reason why I do paint outside, just so I can really like get those vibes.
Yeah, how does that translate into the work, would you say?
Man, I mean, as far as like recently, I've been trying to paint more nature, and but as before, it was there's been like different stuff that I've done. You know, I've like entered like chapter 4, you know, in my creative interests and influences. But as of now, I'm getting more into like the naturalistic vibe. Like I'm painting more animals, I'm painting flowers, I'm painting like plants, and like it's more outdoor landscape. But and more realism. It's just like taking snapshots of what's around.
Yeah, you adding a lot of like more people in your work too, like human forms. Like
Yeah.
you've gone. I feel like it started out with kind of the
Symbolism and stuff like that.
yeah, and then like you went into like really had like a really strong geometric vibe, and
Yeah,
now
yeah.
it's like
To where
those
it was,
are
what is that?
yeah,
Yeah.
and now you're like. And you still add some human form into that too
Right,
with
right.
the geometric stuff,
But
and now
really
it's like full
confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's like full form where you kind of have like
A nose
to the
and
point where
eyes.
and you're like actually doing intestines and stuff now too.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of what's inspiring this new like wave of stuff that you're like working on right now?
I just haven't been in it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like touching that page in the textbook that I'm kind of low key scared of, because people have like predetermined, you know, criticism when it comes to realism. It's like if it doesn't look like Da Vinci, then it ain't good, you know.
Yeah.
Or like any other, you know. But realism is it's a very, very perfectionist type approach, and I've always been the dude that like relishes on his mistake, or not relishes, but accepts his mistakes and like enjoys them, you know, like because or else like, you know, I'm always like the type that says imperfection makes like, you know, the personality greater or better, because you can actually just be more goofy and yourself, and like, you know, not be fabricated and like made to like look like you're almighty or something, you know, like. But like, you know, I started out more like on a Basquiat vibe and like, you know, the neo-expressionism vibe, and that was, you know, more of a retaliation on what was going on at the time, which was minimalism. And like it was minimalism. There was like a painting. It was called White on White, and it's like white paint on white canvas entirely. And like, what the fuck is that? You know, like, to me, that shit kind of irks me. It's like, damn, all the possibilities, all the things that could have been on that canvas, and you just painted that shit white, and it's being sold for like, you know, $100,000 or like more, you know, just because of like who the artist is. And like, yeah, I thought of it first, white on white. Like, great, you thought of like nothing, like really. But and then like neo-expressionism is more like letting it's like a dance. It's like letting something guide you, and like letting the brush do more work. And honestly, I learned a lot by like not painting like a pencil, you know, how people hold it so close to the bristles. I've painted from like the end of it and moving it around more to where I don't really have much
Control.
You know, stability and control, and letting more mistakes happen. And like, of course, you know, cleaning it up a little bit, but at the same time just like saying, yo, that drip looks sick, I'm gonna just hold on to that. And like, whatever happens almost. Like I painted a few that I just didn't even care about, like, you know, cleaning the mess up, just letting it be. And that was like kind of crazy shit. But that was also a learning experience, you know, like that's the thing. I had so much on my mind and so much to say that it just made sense. That's how I approached that style in the beginning of it, because there was a lot going on in my mind and I wanted to let loose. And then now going into it now, it's like I'm refining it, and like kind of filtering out all that other shit that I was like, you know, letting loose and making it more like concentrated.
Got you.
Feel me?
That's tight.
Yeah.
That's tight. What's the last? You're like super into anime, so sorry. We're gonna go down a rabbit hole real quick. If you're not into anime, I apologize. And I'm not the biggest anime fan. I know a few things, watched a few things.
Yeah.
But like, what are you watching right now?
We talked about Initial D.
Yeah. That's your what's the name right now? That's your Abby on IG.
Yeah. It's one of the racers.
Yeah. One of the main what's it called? Antagonists.
Yeah. It's season 1.
Yeah,
stood out to me a lot, and it was dope because, like you said, it was shitty ass anime.
It is. It's terribly great.
Good.
It's so good, bro.
It's so strange how that hit me. And I was like, yo. But there was it's these scenes. It's like it's like they would just be so serious about stuff, and it's like you're going like 80 miles an hour on a straight, and you're just like this guy's gonna beat me.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta do something. I gotta like, how is he turning so fast? And like, it's like, bro, like I feel like racing is a lot more like intuitive. You know, like you can't teach somebody how to race. You kind of have to know.
That's what the series is kind of about too.
It's about
real.
Like,
it's about just experience. Like he just did it, and he just like
because he had just started. But yeah, Initial D was like, it's become one of my favorites, and that was more like newer, I guess, even though it's an old, it was like early 90s or something. But I started watching Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho is actually the shirt I have on, and that's dope. I really fuck with.
Where are you watching it on?
I have a Funimation app.
Okay, you
so
out here with it.
The whole joint, you know.
What? I know about Funimation, but I just wouldn't. I wouldn't have the app.
Funimation's dope because it like bridges different, like because people when they think of Funimation, they think of like a certain group of anime. But there's so much more that they also put out or like have in their catalog. So I'm like literally just learning so much right now, and some new, some old, but Mob Psycho is dope because it's about a guy that has this. He has like telepathic powers, like in like psychic powers, to where he can like ward off spirits and haunting spirits, and like people with like OCDs and weird shit going on in their lives. They will go to this agency, and his name is Mob, and Mob would like figure out what's going on and like whoop ass on this demon. And it's dope.
Word.
Yeah.
Freeing people up. That's tight.
So I'm also like trying to get into that too, like trying to draw more, you know, and like have more dialogue into what I do, and like what things could, conversations within paintings and stuff like that. And also to talk about somebody, I give a quick shout out. This guy Tef Hart, he used to go by 6 Mile. He did the Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, KOD album cover.
Oh, okay, word.
Yeah.
Tight.
That dude is dope, and he's really influenced by anime, and he kind of like put me onto that.
It's funny how you can like, and I don't know how many people actually do this, but like if you like research the artists of folks who are like making album covers, or like, really, it's kind of weird too, right? It's like when you talk about, like you were talking about the fun with the books and like the different experience, like when you're like downloading or streaming music. I try and do it consciously, but I know very few people are actually like, look, it used to be something to be able to buy a CD and you had the booklet where you could look at the credits and look at the art.
Exactly.
And it's like now, it's like, it's cool because it's you lose an experience, but you gain an experience. Because I use Spotify, and Spotify now has this thing where they have like videos on loops for each song or for an album. Oh, so it's like, if you're like, you can see the visual that the artist like decided to have or created or worked on. Sometimes it's just like a loop screenshot of a video, right. But sometimes it's specific to the song, and it's a different one for each song.
Oh, that's sick.
Some people get lazy with it and do the same thing for the whole album. Right. So it's like we lose these like natural experiences, but we pick up these digital ones, and it's like they both like have their own situation.
I mean, that's, I'm not like dissing any of the technology. I love that for sure. But like, it's like you gotta like try to be balanced in that regard. Like, don't lose space with like where you come from, but also like be open to new ideas and how things are going. Like, you can't, I don't know, you don't be closed-minded. Like, I've always tried to open my mind as much as I can. Like, I kind of like incentivize that, and people try to give people, or like, when I do talk, I try to listen a little bit more in order to see where people stand and like how far I should go. But usually, like, when you let somebody talk, they'll try to stay in their own little world. But like, I try to like beckon the more of that. Like, I'm like, so what about that, and this and that, and like, I have a hard time saying I have a belief, because like I really just want to know about everything, and like I guess my belief is like just being like more open, trying to be open-minded. But yeah, like I watch Funimation on an app, like I watch my shit on there. But then I went to Manifest Discs and like bought some anime on DVD form.
Yeah, for sure.
And like,
it's about balance.
I got to flip through like little booklets in there, and like buying the Dragon Ball GT saga on DVD, and having that luxury of seeing like, because it's multiple, and seeing like the picture
change,
the picture, like which is cool. It's like you won't get that through like a phone or a computer. So like material items is vital, but at the same time, you got to give credit to like instant, like, yo, like I want to watch an episode now. Boom, you got it. Like that's great.
Want to
like,
sell a painting now?
Exactly.
Boom.
Online.
How has that been for you? Like the democratization of art and like being able to sell stuff via DM through the internet, having your own website if you have a website, or just Instagram. I mean, either way, like Instagram is like the thing right now. You know what I mean?
I get it. But
what's that process been like for you?
It was cool because I didn't know I was, I guess, marketing myself, just putting stuff online at first, and really it was a slow process. I wasn't good when I started. I was just more experimenting with stuff. Learned a lot, and then really so when I started doing art, I wanted to learn a lot very fast, and a lot of that had to do with like me trying to get out of my comfort zone. And so I would go to work and I painted paintings for people at work, but they didn't know. I would just ask them like what their favorite animal was, and they'll be like elephant. So I'll go home that night and paint an elephant, come back with it at work and surprise them with it. And like just the joy you get from seeing somebody get some like a present, regardless of what it is awesome. And then they're like, oh, that's why you asked me what my favorite animal was, like all this and that. And like so I started doing that to random people. And like it was a lot of foot traffic, right? Like, you know, I started working through word of mouth, and like that's where I really, you know, felt like I was at, very grassroots level. But then like when I started posting stuff online, people would be like, yo, that's dope, like how much for that? And that was when I was like, damn, like I don't even know how to price my shit, like how much is all this? And then I started thinking about like how much like Picassos and stuff are, like millions. And like I remember I told somebody it was like $500 for this little tiny shit that I did, and they were like, bro, you crazy. I'm like, okay, so I gotta reel that shit back in. I
think that's the like interesting portion of it, and the part that I'm interested in the psychology of
value.
Value, but like the Instagram buyer versus like the person who might see your stuff in the gallery or might see yourself at an exhibition, or like that's the stuff I think about. You know what I mean? I think about that democratization, because I mean, you have obviously you have the ability, you can get that $1,000 client off of Instagram. Yeah. But I like the likelihood, at least my experience with photography, and like how like I got paid more for photography when I stopped marketing my stuff on Instagram.
Really?
You know what I mean? So it's like I'm always interested in how different creatives have experiences with using, you know, the internet to market themselves, or how they use the internet to market themselves and stuff like that. Yeah.
Like think about it like this. I feel like Lil Wayne just put out like a liquor or some shit, and
he did.
That shit's being sold at Walmart, and like that's smart because he's gonna be selling a lot, but it's gonna be cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you lose through marketing a little bit of the value because it's so widely seen and like it's there. But when you are like Supreme and you release something like, you know, maybe like 20 articles of clothing within a quarter, and it drops once every week, and there's a very, very limited amount that comes out, and people know like if you're not on it, you're gonna lose it, and if you want to buy it, you're gonna have to go to eBay and pay like 300 times more. You know what I'm saying? So keeping things like kind of in like close to you would increase the value. So like when I do paint, like I'll of course post a picture of it, but like I wouldn't like put a price tag on it, or like I wouldn't explain what it is or anything like that, to where people are become interested and be like, so what does that one mean? You know, instead of me putting everything up there for everybody to see, and then like people would start to like be like, okay, I get it now, you know, instead of like trying to dig into it and being like, yo, I wonder like how many people actually know about that, you know? So I try to be as minimal as I possibly can when I put stuff online, and that kind of gives like, because I have sold like, you know, paintings for more than $600, $700 at this point.
For sure.
But back in the day, it was like obviously my techniques, I needed to polish myself in what I was doing. But I'm getting to that point to where it's becoming a lot more lucrative. But also I don't want to like, I don't make prints. You know, I don't like, I try to remain like one of one with things. That way people will be like, yeah, like I have the one, you know, and where people won't I don't know. I don't want to pressure people into buying the art, but they'll be pressured to realize like, damn, this dude like really cares about his shit, you know? Because I do. I paint with like really like that expressive nature. Like I want to figure myself out. You know what I'm saying? I'm going through some shit, and sometimes like I don't even paint until like I kind of realize like, damn, like this shit is bottled up. Like I gotta let loose. You know what I'm saying? And it gets like real emotional type shit. And like I get really upset and tormented when I'm painting. So there's like a process when I paint. It's like I'm super like excited because there's something in my mind and like I'm letting it out. But then like halfway through in like the first layer or two, I'm like, this shit looks horrible. And then like I leave it alone, you know. I be posting like on my story like some work I'm doing, and then like people be like, yo, so what happens to that one you were painting on? And I'm like, man, I put that shit aside for a second, bro. Like I can't even get to it. I'm still trying to figure it out. And then like,
what are the stages in that process? Like you said, it's a process when you're painting. So what are the stages like experience, and it's getting bottled up. So like if you could like map it out for folks, what would that?
It's like,
I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but just curious.
It's like, I don't know. I'm starting to think of like the acceptance of death. You know, the stages of like.
Oh, like stages of grief or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really like epiphany, like execution, then torment, then like recollection, and then like that final stretch to finish it. You know what I'm saying? So there's like a very, very like, it's hardship because I always try to do something new every time. And it's like I hit that wall, and everybody knows every creative will hit a wall. Especially when we're trying to like do something different than we did before, and we're just like, damn, like maybe I should stick to what I know. But I hate thinking like that because like I've seen like myself go through those walls, you know, before. So when I hit it again, it's just like, fuck, here we go again, like on that GTA shit. But yeah, no, I was like, I mean, I'm going through one right now, like just trying to. I posted something on my story. I was like redecorating the inside of my brain or inside of my head currently. And it's like I'm picking up different books. I'm looking at different things. I'm actually into like Art Deco now. Like,
what is that?
You know, it's like the golden age of like illustration and art. It's like 1920s.
Word.
You know what I'm talking about? Like,
nah, I'm gonna research it though, cause like, and if anybody who's like watched the podcast or watched previous episodes, they know I'm like super into like figuring out just different periods and styles and stuff like that. So that's a new one on me.
Like the
I'm gonna figure that one out.
Gatsby era.
Okay.
Like think of like that glamorous, you know, type of vibe.
Yeah.
But I'm looking more at the figure and composition of things.
Got you.
Not emulating like the style and
completely.
Like,
yeah. I think that's how it goes too. Like for just inspiration and experiences in general, it's like you like, I looked at this and I got this from it, and I'm just gonna like glean that and just keep adding stuff in, and that like is what makes the signature style.
Not to discredit anything that Kyle said in this, when y'all were talking, but he was talking about like, you know, how other artists or some artists don't have a voice because they copy or they'll like take somebody's style and just run with it. I think that to an extent is correct, but a lot of it is wrong. There's like a lot of gray area that he's missing when he says stuff like that. It's because, bro, like even Basquiat copied. Basquiat copied Cy Twombly. He copied de Kooning. He copied Da Vinci. He copied so many different people, but he utilized all those paintings or all those drawings and studies of those people that he did himself to make something.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, especially in like the age of digital, I feel like Kyle's more so addressing not necessarily people who are doing what we're talking about in terms of being inspired. We're highlighting the difference between being inspired and literally copying someone.
Right.
You know
because there is a difference.
There's a big, you know what I mean?
It's like stealing and copying. It's like stealing is more or less so kind of accepted. Copying is like you're literally just like photocopying somebody's words, you know, and trying to use them as your own.
It's like plagiarism.
Yeah, plagiarism, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Or stealing is like, I take a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that.
Yeah, there's a book that's out there too, right? Like, it's like, Still Like an Artist. Yeah. You can find it like in Urban Outfitters and like everywhere.
These Picasso, all these people's quotes in that book saying like, dude, like I still, like, you know, they're admitting to it. Because there has a really big part of pushing the envelope is learning what came before. And like, I mean, dude, like even in art class, my teacher was telling me like, all right, today we're gonna paint like this guy, we're gonna paint like this guy, and you know, and like we learn from that. We learn how that person, the vibe of that person, the vibe of that time, and like how if we're good or not at it, and if we like it or not, and if we want to utilize that into what we are gonna do eventually.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's like tracing paper. Like you don't know how to do figure. Here's some tracing paper. Like start to understand like you know the composition of things, and then eventually you take that tracing paper out and start to do it yourself, and then eventually you throw that out and start making up your own. You know, so it really is a process. I look at art like the learning of art like school. It's like there's kindergarten through high school, and once you hit high school, you're gonna graduate, hopefully, and and like eventually go into the real world with everything you learned. And that's where I feel like I'm getting close to the graduating level, because I'm like learning all these things, and then I'm gonna find exactly what I'm gonna do for me, for myself, once I'm done with the learning process. The learning process is never over, but you know what I'm talking about, like the fundamental, the foundation.
Yeah, trying to get those like
public school.
Yeah, those foundational elements that like you can define yourself. I think it's important too, because even in context to that conversation that with Kyle, it's like to what you were talking about and being able to pick an era, define an era, see how that era has influenced you, and then be able to talk about it. I think if you can't do that, then it's like that's when you're copying.
Are
like
you hearing me?
Yeah, okay. You're good for the most part. Right. I wasn't gonna force it to you.
It's been a couple. Gone.
It's like damn. It's been caught, but I wanted to push it over, but I was like, I'm not gonna force him.
I fuck around, hit my nose.
But yeah, like that was the main thing, is just like being able to identify, and that's why like for me it was so important like last year to and I say this like sorry almost on every episode, but it was like very important to me to be able to understand like just what happens in the context of art, and to be able to explain anything that I'm doing and apply it to people who exist in this world. Because like I said, I'm an innate business guy. Like that's what dominates. I think everything comes from that lens naturally.
Right.
So I have to work that much harder for the creative side to flourish.
Yeah, it's tough. I went through a hard time, very depressed time, like where I didn't. It was like that first time, like somebody was like, "Dude, you paint just like Basquiat. Do something different." I'm like, "Fuck." Like, I don't know what I could do. Like, and that was when like I started really, really feeling down about it, and like, damn, like people really ragging on me for painting like this dude, even though like I know I can do more. But at this time, it's just like what makes sense. And it's like, I'm not out here trying to exploit this motherfucker. I'm out here trying to like learn about these techniques and these like where I could go with things, and like it was just the first step I took. So, but anyway, there was that time where I was like I felt like Basquiat. I felt like I was being used in a kind of like I was paranoid about people's actions and motives and stuff like that. And like I felt like I didn't really have friends. I was kind of like on a lonely tip, like some like Kanye West meltdown shit, like, and I moved into a buddy of mine's place, and like we had like the coolest rapport. And then he started dating this girl, and he was constantly gone. So it was always me at that crib, and it was just me sitting there with like just this thought of like not being wanted, stuff like that. Not like no homo, but like as far as like having that dude, like the homie with me, like the guy that told me to move in, like he's got my back and tried to pull me out of that dark place. And then he just kind of dipped, and I just felt like, damn, that was the last straw. It was like, man, like I really needed that dude. And then that was when I just fucking said peace, and I moved to Brazil. And Brazil opened my eyes. And if I didn't go to Brazil, I don't know what would have happened to me. I was like on some suicidal mentality shit.
Talk about that, man. I just went on my first international trip at the end of last year. So,
Brazil,
and then on top of that, you're like going back to like your country of origin for like your family. So
that shit opened up my eyes, because like it was that time I needed that. I was very like, all right. I was going through that like depressive state, and I was like, it was winter time out here. I didn't have a car. I hated my job, and I felt like everybody was like just not in my life, you know. So I was like, damn, like I really need to go. And I read this book called Bound for Glory by Woody Guthrie, and it's about how shitty his life was and how he pulled his bootstraps and like started finding work and traveling, you know, like he would catch the freight trains town to town and like get off and meet people and learn stuff. And that he made the song like "This land is your land, this land is my land" from California.
Okay.
Yeah. So like he started singing like the first traces of like folk music. And like he only learned that through his experience of like traveling town to town and stuff like that. So what I learned when I went to Brazil was like the world is way bigger than what I make it seem.
Yeah.
And like the reality is like family is mad important. I mean, I got some homies now that are like family, but I didn't have that then, and I needed a reminder. So I went out there, and like I met my half sister for the first time. Like there was like this crazy like, you know, euphoria that I had by meeting her, and like just like damn, like family, like that shit is so important. And like I roamed the streets by myself out there. I started talking to the people, learning to polish up on my Portuguese, and like, you know, exercising my brain and like you know, language and like culture and stuff like that. So that was huge. And towards the end of the trip, I went to this guy's studio because I was inquiring people like, is there any artists around here? Like, so I met this guy Cicero Matos, and his shit is so dope because it's very vibrant and it's almost just like how I painted, like very almost careless, but with like some sort of structure. So I saw myself in him, and I was like, damn, like, and he's like 60 years old, so it's like, this is who I'm gonna be like.
You said he got like he has like a wild journey to get materials, right? Like his
he had to travel like 4 hours to get materials, so he would buy in bulk, and come back with like a wagon full of shit. But yeah, because where I was at is Jacobina, Brazil, which is like, it's in Bahia. Bahia is like very, very Afro, you know, centric. It's like a very, it's the beginning of Brazil, you know, and it's like one of the biggest. There are more black people in Brazil than there are anywhere else in the world outside of Africa, and that specific state, Bahia, is like all black, and it's so cool because like that's where most of the culture, Brazilian culture, flourished and started, and like that's what I was seeing. And like my dad's from a town called Caldeirão Grande, which is literally translates to big cauldron. So it's the melting pot of settlers and the indigenous and slavery and stuff like that. So my dad has a little bit of pigment, and like, you know, his family is like can get dark or can get light. So there's this cool like vibe that I get. I'm learning from like, you know, the African culture, and I'm learning from like you know, the European side of things too. But the Cicero Matos is a mulatto. He's mixed, and like he embodies that like full Brazilian vibe, which is both sides of that scope. It's like, you know, the white side, the Caucasian side, and like the Afro-African side, and bringing it together and making that beautiful mess look good, you know what I'm saying? And that's one of the biggest things that like influenced me coming out of Brazil, was like understanding the culture and bringing in like influences that, you know, you might have like not even really thoroughly looked into, you know? And like he told me just to keep going with it and just like stay true and be more like soulful with what you do, but also don't forget about where you come from and like who you are. And I told him that I was just visiting for the first time with this intention of getting inspiration and whatnot. And he was like, well, I'm glad I did it for you, because like he noticed that I was like super like dick riding. Like I was like, bro, like you're dope, like dope. And like right next door to his place is this yoga little yoga spot, yoga room, and we did some yoga. That shit was cool.
Word. Dope. Last thing before we take some questions real quick. So you like, you paint, but like you also work in, I asked you to ask you if it was cool to talk about this, but like you also work in food service and kind of found yourself a career in food service to help. I
hate saying career, but damn.
I mean, How would you? I don't know how you want me to describe
it is a career at this point. It's like 12 years deep. So.
That's actually how we met. I actually meant to touch on that too.
Yeah, like, right next door.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
no. We met at oh crap, what's the thing in South Park with the brunch? Terrace Cafe.
Terrace Cafe.
This was like years ago, like 2014.
Yes,
2014,
yo. I forgot about that.
That's when we first linked. Yeah. That's when we first linked. We got reconnected in person over here.
I knew you as a profile.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
I was like, you're Dave, right? And you're like, yeah, you're there with your girl, and I'm like, sorry, I'm fanboy right now.
But not even, bro. Nah, it's tight, bro. I always appreciate stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like talk about that a little bit and how that like if it has influenced the work or like what kind of led to that, how you ended up in food service as like with what you do to kind of like fund the art. Like think about that's what it is. Food service is your investor.
Yeah,
we'll put it like that.
Well, like I want to get out of the restaurant business. So that's what influences me the most. It's like going up in there. It's like that cubicle job to like as a figure of speech.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be there unless you just don't have anything else going on in your life. If you're not thoroughly inspired by what you do every day, then why do you do it type thing?
Mm-hmm.
And half my day is dedicated, if not more, to going to work and working at a place that I haven't even met the CEO of this place that I'm at. Most places, you know what I'm saying? So to me, it's like I'm so out of touch with what this really is.
Mm-hmm.
And that always pisses me off. So really a lot of it is just stemming from like me wanting to get out of it. It's like I make good money at a restaurant that I'm at now. So that's the only thing that I care about. But I just had a conversation with somebody else the other day. If you're doing it for money, then that shit is so empty. Like there's nothing that you can thoroughly hold as like content or like substance, you know what I'm saying? Out of that. That's when I started to realize I want to get the fuck out of here. When I started understanding that I'm not gaining anything spiritually. I'm not gaining anything passionately, I'm going into this very empty and, like most of the people that are in there already are like, fuck my life. Like I hate this job too. Like, and sour moods. Like I hate that shit. I'm a very positive person if I'm doing what I want to do. Not to sound like a brat or anything, but, I can get out of my comfort zone too, but not for that long. It's been like 10, 12 years. I've tried to do what I could, But like I'm at that point to where like, damn, like I would almost rather just quit and just like try to ride this shit out, And like I think somebody you had on here to do with the dreads,
Kim.
Yeah. He said some shit like, it's like waking up in Toronto and like not knowing what the fuck to do, and you don't have anything. You're sleeping on the fucking floor or on the couch. And you're just like, all right, we out here. Like, let's go do something about it. And that's a big kick in the ass for anybody that has a craft or anything. It's just like not have a stability, not have anything going on to where you're like, all right, I'm good. Like, I can chill today because I got work. I got a paycheck coming Friday that's going to pay my bills. If you don't have that, you're like grinding. You're like, damn, I got to do this or else I'm out on the streets. So I feel like I need that. But at the same time, like, man, I just got more responsibilities. Like, and I feel like it's also teaching me to be patient, And patience to me, I'm a very wired dude. Like I'm very like, let's do like, you know what I'm saying? Like when I drive, I'm driving above the speed limit no matter what. I'm trying to get a place. Road rage is like second nature, bro. Like I'm like blaring the horn. But I need to learn how to center myself. And dealing with people in restaurants, man, that shit will
100%.
Patient,
my first job was at Chick-fil-A in high school, and I was like, I'm never going back to food service because people just act different about their food, man.
Yeah,
like it's like and rightfully so. Like it's food, like you have to put it in your body. Right. So like I get it, but it's just like some people are just like OD. It's like okay, bro, like I'm making $7 an hour, or well, at least I was at the time. But I'll come over this counter, bro. Like
exactly.
It'll be my pleasure to whoop your ass, like for real.
Dude, I've been this close several times. Trust me, man. I would ball my fist sometimes in front of them while they're talking and just be like, and I'll walk away. Like, damn, I was about to lose it on this dude, bro. But no, it's like, see, that's what I'm saying. Like patience. I didn't have any of that. My mom didn't know how to tame me as a kid, and like Pops wasn't around to give me that heavy ass whooping that I would remember type shit. You know what I'm saying? So like my mom is just always kind of like, damn, all right, I lost him. He's gone with the wind. And like, but I would go to like a job, like, you know, at a restaurant, and like if I lose it there, I'm out of a job.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
for sure.
So that always lingers in
Some
my head.
structure,
So
yeah.
like I learned how to bite my lip. I learned how to like hold back some things, obviously, but you know, as an artist, like, do you want to hold back shit like this and that? So there's a combative, like, you know, it's a clash, you know, and but I feel like it's given me a sense of like growth and maturity, you know, and I think that's important.
Of
like,
course.
And I feel like if it were meant to be, I would be selling those like $1,000 paintings at this point and not needing a job. I feel like it's teaching me something that I need to have in my repertoire come later on in life. You know what I'm saying?
And that for sure. That's how it was for me when I was at Coca-Cola. Like, I didn't realize it until it's like retroactive. It was retroactive for me. Like, I didn't realize it until I was like thinking about it after I was gone. Yeah. And I was like, dang, I picked up this skill, and this skill while it was happening. So it's good that you're like present and you're able, at least to somewhat present, where it's like you maybe feel empty when you're going for something empty, but you know that like, okay, I'm actually reaping something, because you can really, yeah, man. Like for me, I just. And it's a balance, right? Like, for me, that's what I think ultimately ended up having me leave. But I think that I was still gleaning something, even if I didn't recognize it or put it to use until later, which is dope. Later, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's for anybody who's, like, transitioning or trying to transition or trying to figure that out, is like, yo, like, there's a silver lining. And then if you're, like, when you want to go, you'll go. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, when it's your time, it'll be your time for real.
And I feel like you shouldn't act impulsively. I think you should keep your job, keep your day job until you're damn near sure, like, I think I got something good going, and like you can run with it. Like, I don't know. I felt like I was at that point once in my life, because I had a show, like you talked about some of the biggest things that happened in my career in the 7 years. I had a show at Black Sheep. And
they gave you like your own deck and all of that. That was tight.
That was another. It's just up there with that magazine feature.
For sure.
Black Sheep, man, they looked out for the boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a dream of mine, first of all, to have a skate deck. Right. Richie just tells me, yeah, man, we'll do an art show, and like we'll print up a couple hundred skateboards with your shit on it. I was stunned, bro. Like, I didn't know how to contemplate. Like, I couldn't think of anything at that point, but like sheer joy. I'm like, yo, like, I was so like, oh, I lost some words, and Richie's looking at me like, you good, you got it, man. No
Need
problem.
A second.
And like, but yeah, so that happened. That show was awesome because it was during the block party, and it was a day after my birthday. So I was like, this vibe, you know what I'm saying? Like, for sure. And like the World Cup was going on in Brazilian, so Brazilians are like, you know, there's this energy, and it was like probably one of the best years that in my career as far as art. And that day, I had, you know, an art show. I had the big paintings were across the street at the Art League. This is when they were in South End.
Yeah, for sure.
And the smaller
R.I.P.
ones,
to the old South End.
I know. You're with us still. But what's it called? Black Sheep. Black Sheep had like at least 28 paintings in there or something like that. More than 20. And then like 2 weeks later, bro, some dude I haven't even met yet just goes in and buys like 4 or 5 paintings. And they were all at like $450 to $500 paintings. And that shit, like, yo, Josh just hit me up. He was like, bro, come through and get some money. I'm like, I go in and he's cashing it. And I'm like, when are you going to run out of bills, bro? Like, he was just like dropping it. I'm like, yo, I'm fucking losing my mind. Yeah. Like, I get into my car, and at that point, bro, I thought I was going to quit my job.
Yeah. That'll do it, man. That'll do it. That first, like, big couple $100, that first, but like, then I was combo will make you like,
man, like, I might as well bank. Like, I might as well not quit this job, making this dough. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, for sure. And like, I mean, money's meant to be spent. That shit.
It comes and goes.
That shit goes. It eventually goes. Yeah. So like, but that was a learning process, like dealing with money management, and like seeing a little slight success and thinking you're the man for a second, and then you get a real wake up call. Like, you're like, no, man, you got to keep this shit going. You got to be like consistent with it. When people appreciate you, or like when you have that thing going, you got to be on it, you know, or else you're just gonna catapult down, you know, like the one hit wonders type, you know. There's a reason why, like, there's like, I think like 2015 or 13 XL cover, like there's only like one dude out of that that's still relevant, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that shit woke me up. I'm like, damn, bro, like they made it to that list. They thought their shit was on point.
Mm-hmm.
They thought they made it. They thought they were gonna keep going, and then like all of them practically are irrelevant at this point, or don't have a major project out, you know, or like really struggling to get people's attention again.
Yeah.
And it's a real wake up call. You know, you never really know what's gonna happen in the next route around the corner. So that's, I mean, you just gotta really know where your heart's at and where your mind's at before you get clouded with like attention. And like that's why I be reclusive, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like I was getting mad love and whatnot too early on,
Mm-hmm.
before I even knew who I was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like that's a part of like what happens with just technology and sharing now. Folks are able to, because you're able to share the process and you do get that validation, whether it is somebody purchasing your work early or somebody, or whether it's likes or whatever it is. I was on a kick where I was saying that a couple years ago, where it was like one of the like main points, if I was ever on, like I was ever talking to anybody, or if I was on a podcast or getting interviewed or something like that,
Right.
I always met, like, I think people share too early, just because they can right now, and then that like gets you into the mentality. It kind of stunts your growth in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like you gotta let shit be more natural rather than like, here, this is what I got, like, you know, all this and that. It's like the mystique of things, like, you know, I'm gonna admit it. I'm the type of person that likes to chase, and once I achieve it, it's just like I kind of lose interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to like any girls that I've hurt in the past, but it's just more or less so like the mystique of things. I like wanting to know more and being like, damn, I still haven't figured it out, and I love that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
learning. Like I love learning, and I do it by myself. I hated school, but like I can do it like every day, all day, and like flip through books and learn. And like that's the thing. Like you shouldn't put everything out on the table until you really understand like that this is it. Like, or you don't want to I don't know. It's I don't know. You need a, there's a love that I have for being reclusive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't let a lot of people into my life. The real ones, the ones that I fuck with, no, you know what I'm saying. The other ones kind of like stay at bay, and like that's one thing. Like I'm the same way with other people. It's like you shouldn't focus on what other people are doing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You should really focus on yourself, because that shit bottles up like jealousy, envy, and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm running on a tangent right now.
We can go into some questions. If anybody from the audience has any questions, we can roll into that, and then after that we can wrap it up. But yeah, anybody got any questions for Anderson?
What's up, man?
So when you get to the stage in your process that's like the torment stage, where like you do something and you're like not satisfied with it, or you're like, who did that? Why did I do that? How do you push forward? Like, what's your next step? Do you pause? Do you push yourself harder? Like, what do you do there?
I pause. I usually like, I don't know, try to release that demon through other things. Like, you know, I've been more healthy now than I've ever been. Just I work out or something like that. I try to release that angst because I know what it is. I know it's a beast that comes around every single painting, and it's just like I've been very careless with him sometimes, you know, and like it's bit me hard. Like, you know, I would get into like heavy drinking and stuff like that. But being healthy now, it's just kind of like clarified everything. It's kind of like, yeah, I know who you are. I know what you are. And that torment is becoming a lot easier to deal with. But it's hard. It's like there's a mixture of things. I try to like maybe get out of my comfort zone, maybe write, maybe like try to verbalize what I'm feeling rather than like visually make something out of it. Listen to music. Music is the ultimate calming aspect. So usually like if I've been on like a certain trend, like as far as a vibe, I'll try to switch it up right there. In order, switch focus, exactly, and then I can return to it with like a different perception or perspective, and like attack it, and usually I'll have more courage at that point to like confront that moment, you know, and just be like, all right, like I think I got it now, and I'll just go. And then it usually ends up like it would go away or it come back again, and that's when I realized like maybe I should just do something else, like and start painting something else. Yeah.
How do you know when you're finished?
That's the tough one. I really don't know, but what do they say?
Good for now.
Yeah, like an artist's work is never finished; it's just abandoned. Yeah, yeah, or like it's only finished when you hang it up somewhere, or like somebody buys it or says like I want that, and you're like, all right, I wasn't finished with it yet, but if you like it, like I got you, bro. Yeah, I just try to sell, or like a homie of mine bought one of the OG paintings that I had at the black market show, so it was cool because he was like, yo, I really dig that graffiti vibe, that crazy vibe. I'm like, all right. So he came through the crib and peeped a bunch of stuff, and like one of which was a painting that I wasn't done with yet, and it was a homage to the parable or the story of Daniel in the lion's den. And I was like just finishing up like the lines and that, and he was like, everything else was not really done, and not till like where I would say like, all right, I'm good. But he was like, how much for this one? I'll buy it right now. I'm like, I'm not even done with it, bro. And like, he's like, I don't care. Like, that shit's dope as is. I'm like, and then I started realizing like, damn, it's not really up to me to say it's done. It's like up to somebody else, low key, just to be like, that's worth purchasing at this point in the process. And like, one of the cooler, like, I watched the Picasso documentary, and like, there was this, one of his wives, he had like 12 or something, like crazy. One of his wives passed away from like some disease or something, and he was doing this portrait of her during that time, and like she passed away, and he left half of it undone, which was like just all pencil or like whatever material he was using. And some of it is painted, which is like her face, half her face is painted, and like some of the background, but everything else is just outlined, and it stayed that way for like life, you know, which is cool in a way. You can appreciate it. I thought it was dope like that.
That's a fire story.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I know you said earlier you don't really like to explain like your work and things like that. Shout out to Dave, and shout out who brought up Family Matters early.
Right.
That's how I got onto you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I seen that.
Shout out Samir.
And I bought like 5 of them shirts. Like,
Word, man. Thank you.
But the one with the face, like my wife is terrified of that.
Yeah.
And I try to explain like, oh, babe, nah, this is ill. Like,
Yeah.
Like, so
The way it's structured and all that.
yeah, like, would you be able to explain, and then maybe I can play her this podcast?
Yeah, give her some more context.
Yeah.
Art is about context. It's all about knowing.
Right.
You know
Well,
what I'm
no,
saying?
I mean, it dives
Understanding.
into like the inner energy, like I said earlier when I was talking about the way I held my brush and whatnot, and like just the style of just going loose and like making things more like natural, and whatever happens. That was one of those takes. I think I ended up calling it berserk, and going berserk. And that's, you can see that the face is kind of distorted, and he's got his mouth open, and he looks like he's like either on fire or like really hype or something like that. And that's just like my inner energy, you feel me? So it's like emulated into that vibe the same way that I paint, like all kind of loose and whatnot. It's just more or less so like, I feel like I'm being channeled by something. I'm like not even painting. It's like somebody working through me, which is just like the inner being. And that was that whole concept, I guess. Like, it's not even a concept, you know, because it's like more loose. It's just like whatever, you know, and I just ran with it. But the colors and whatnot, I think about colors. Like, colors to me is just like, I make sure their composition is structured well to where you don't get too much over here, too little over here. So yeah, with that, it was just more, it was done after maybe like 4 years after when I was on that style. I revisited it, and it looks different because it's like more controlled rather than like crazy like how some of my OG paintings are. But this one was more of like, you know, still a loose approach, but more of like a refined approach. And I think it's just the inner energy of me, of people that share my energy, passion. But it's tough to really explain one like that, because it's more or less feeling rather than like cerebral thought processes. because like if it was like a different one, like I have one called like a quantum leap or something. I have like an equation of like Einstein's of like special relativity and like symbolism from like, you know, Egyptian shit, and like that I can be specific about exactly what it is and like why I did that there and why I did this there and that. But when something is just more or less so like without words or without symbolism, it usually just stems from an emotion, and more of like a feeling, you know, just like trying to let it loose. Yeah.
One more, yeah.
Being a reclusive, I guess, were you reluctant at first to kind of share your artwork with the world? And so how did you get over that?
Yeah, I was. Once I started getting deeper into my own like expression, it was tough because I was scared that people would be like, "Yo, you're fucking weird." You know, I was still at that stage that I wasn't really comfortable with who I was. But when I was like paint, like, you know, different things like animals and whatnot, that was easy. But like I now hand it out and I wouldn't really care. Like, it's a fucking elephant, man. Like, enjoy it. But when it was like I started doing stuff like on my Brazilian heritage and stuff like that, that shit kind of irked me, because like if I were to post this and like somebody'd be like, yo, that shit's weird, and he's like talking about my culture, he's talking about me now, you know, and that shit kind of like, nobody wants to feel attacked or anything like that. I mean, I feel like people don't really they would, if you're gonna comment on something, I feel like you're gonna like be nice about it. You're gonna be like, or like more congratulating or appreciative of it. I don't see haters on my comments. You know what I'm saying? But like, I feel like when I'm at a show and I put it up, and like I'm that quiet, like nobody knows I'm the artist, and I'm just standing behind somebody and seeing like how they talk about it, that shit kind of scares me. You know what I'm saying? Till this day. But no, at first it was tough, because once I started putting it online and I was getting like 5 likes or something like that, I was like, damn, my shit sucks. Like, but it was a learning process. You know, like Jimi Hendrix always thought his voice sucked, but like people loved it. And like he was always like this weird dude, like off the stage, and he'd go on stage and like kill it. You know what I'm saying? So it was just more or less so like, I'm jumping out of that airplane, I don't care if my parachute doesn't open, like we're just gonna try this out. And luckily I did, and you know, I'm getting some attention and some appreciation.
Tight. Ladies and gentlemen, Anderson Brasileiro.